So if you're preparing this piece for All State, by now you probably know that even though it says Sonata on the audition sheet, this piece is the Quartet in FK 370 by Mozart. And when you're looking for recordings, you should be listening to that. A couple of practice suggestions: slow scales, medium tempo, and then up to tempo for intonation, articulation, and then for tempo. Besides your slow scales, arpeggios, really tune those octaves of the Fs and the Cs, and thirds would also be a fantastic idea. When you're playing this, when you're choosing a tempo for the audition, you can go a little faster than I took it, you can go a little slower. What's most important for me, if I were judging this, would be, do you understand the rhythm and the musicality and the phrasing of the piece? And I prefer to hear all the notes and all the ornaments clean, as opposed to done at the most allegro tempo possible. A quick word about the ornaments. The grace note followed by 2/16 should be played as a triplet, taking up 1/8 note beat. So I think I demonstrated that pretty clearly. Don't feel that you absolutely have to put 2 shakes in measure 21 and 23. If you can just do 1 shake, that's fine. Listen to the turns, the rhythm of the turns. That's pretty specific. There are a couple of different ways to play it, but make sure you don't distort the rhythm of the notes around that turn. Same thing for those trills in 21 and 23. Don't distort the rhythm of the total group of 4/16 notes. Be careful of the rhythm at the very end of the exposition. That has to come in on the and of the beat. You have to fit in your trill and the Nachschlag afterwards. Articulation. So you'll notice, compared to the versions that were suggested that you purchase, I have taken a lot of liberties with the articulations and the slurs. Again, I believe you should use what works for you. Every single slur, every single tongued passage should have a musical purpose. I often articulate as I'm going upwards to make it more exciting as I'm crescendoing. And you might notice that as I'm going downwards in passages, I slur the group. In those difficult scale passages, such as measure 17, measure 53, a slur over 2 notes would be a good idea to put in. Bum, pa, ya, pa, 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 ya, pa, 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 pa. That's just a suggestion. But you can make a lot of musical sense out of that, and it'll make it easier to play. Let's see. Phrasing. So your phrasing should be determined by a couple of things, but mainly, where are the dissonances? Where are the high points of the phrase? Go to them, and then always come back. In classical period music, you'll often find that you'll want to diminuendo your cadences. That's very appropriate in this piece. Generally speaking, my quarter notes are a little on the separated, not long. Leggero would be a good idea to keep in mind. And then lastly, for phrasing, sometimes you can think, even though it's in 4/4, you can think of this as in cut time. For example, measure 39, those 8 measures or so, you can think of those in cut time. Measure 25, 26, 27, it's very comfortable to think of those in cut time. And then when you get to the scalar passages, by all means, think of them in 4/4. The beginning of the development in 67, also, think of that in cut time, it's very appropriate. So because if you play it in cut time, you'll just naturally stress 1 and 3, and then 2 and 4 will be very light upbeats, and that'll help your phrasing. And I think we can leave it there. Thank you very much, and happy practicing. So for the second movement, a couple of things that I would be listening for: obviously pitch, stability of tone, vibrato, and some rhythmical spots are tricky. Really make sure you understand the rhythm in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, measure 6. While that can be treated as a quasi cadenza, it's somewhat free because you're alone. The clearer you are with the rhythm, the easier it will make it for you to play. Immediately afterwards, my best advice for the passage where you go super high and then super low, as you're practicing, make sure you're able to accomplish, make sure you practice long tones in all registers, low and very, very high, that you never leave your balance of embouchure, support, and don't end up trying to squeeze too hard, trying to make it so loud, or sometimes less is more. Sometimes it's more important how soft you start rather than how loud you end up getting. Use dynamic and vibrato to help show where the downbeats are of each measure. That will help your phrasing in this spot in measure 7, 8, 9, 10. Once we get to the B flat major section, a couple measures later, then feel free to move the tempo forward. Then the next tricky rhythmic spot is measure 17, 18. Make sure you understand the rhythm there. In measure 18, I crescendo 2 beat 2 to make that rhythm very clear. Anything else? Measure 22, we've heard this spot before, don't belabor the point. If you have a third octave key, I would strongly suggest you use it for 25. Again, crescendo into the downbeats gently. You might notice some of the trills, I start my trills from above. That's just how I was taught, but I wouldn't, be offended or anything like that if you started them on the note. And you might have noticed in measure 31, I put a very teeny tiny cadenza in there. It's totally appropriate. There is a fermata in the original part. It's standard practice. You don't have to do it if you don't feel comfortable. In fact, all I ended up playing was some scales, some small versions of scales, and a turn. So no big deal. Don't tell me your life story in the cadenza. And then you trill out of it, and then 32. Even though it's piano, try to play the two iterations differently, whether with dynamic or with spacing and timing and phrasing. Be very judicious with your vibrato at the ends of notes. If you can't control it, just support well and don't worry about the vibrato. Just make it a beautiful sound at the end of the note. Have fun with this one. It's a beautiful piece.